Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to Wake Up, Look Up, a podcast where we connect events happening in real time to the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm Zach Weihrauch. And in today's episode, we're asking the question, what is the first step towards discipling your kids? I asked this question prompted by two things. The first is that I realize for many parents, the idea that they are supposed to disciple their kids, to teach their kids theology, to help them wrestle and navigate through life's deeper questions, to open the Bible and do family worship and teach them the stories of God's faithfulness is pretty intimidating. Most parents don't feel prepared for it, don't feel trained for it, and don't feel like they have the time, that life is too busy, too chaotic. And so you might find yourself going, well, how do I just take a step in that direction? Is there a small thing that I can do to move in that direction? And the second reason I asked this question is it's prompted by an article I read in The Atlantic this week, because the answer is the first step is to get your kids reading, to get them reading anything at all, to do some reading. That's because the article I read was by Weihrauch, who's written on this extensively. We've covered articles of her in the past, looking at how the future generation is reading less and less. We are increasingly becoming a culture with a lowering tolerance for books. I'll throw this stat at you. In 1971, college students were asked, why are you in college? And 73% of them said, I'm in college to develop a meaningful philosophy of life, to think about life's deeper questions, to wrestle with meaning and purpose and those kinds of things. Only 37% said they were in college to gain financially. Well, fast forward to 2015, the same question was asked of college students, and 82% of them said, I'm in college to gain financially. We've shifted as a culture. If your primary purpose in life is to make money, to pay the bills, to buy things, reading is always going to feel like a nuisance. Of course, the problem with that, from a Christian perspective, is that God has communicated with us in a book. We're supposed to be readers. It's inescapably true that if you want to grow in your faith, you're going to have to be a reader. The revelation of God is there for you in the scriptures. Psalm 19 says, the heavens are declaring the glory of God. But it goes on to say, if a man wants to know his hidden faults, to be kept from presumptuous sins, he has to go to the scriptures for that. Reading is the key to discipleship. And if you can't get your kid to read, if they won't read, they're not going to translate that to the Bible. So as parents, we have to understand it is vitally important that our kids are competent readers who actually can learn and enjoy learning through the written word. So of course, that begs the question, how do we do that? Well, there's a couple of ways as parents I want to call you to, but all of these ways are under the idea that Deuteronomy 6 says it is your job to disciple your kids, and you do that through the Bible, which involves reading. So here we go. 3 ways you can do that. Number 1, become a reader yourself. Your kids need to see you reading books, preferably reading the Bible. Kids catch more than they're taught, right? More is caught than taught. That's what we say. So can your kids remember a time where they saw their parents reading their Bible, reading at all? Are you modeling that true learning and entertainment comes through a screen? Or are you actually modeling the value of sitting down with a book, of investing time and energy into reading, especially reading the Bible? Listen, you don't just read the Bible for you. You read it for your family. You model that. You echo what the Apostle Paul said when he said, imitate me as I also imitate Jesus. You're saying to your kids, learn from me the way I'm learning from Jesus. Here's the second thing, read the Bible to your kids. Listen, there are so many compelling tools out there. Jesus Storybook Bible, the Gospel Bible. There's so many great tools out there that parents can use to read the stories of God's faithfulness to their kids. My family, we do it right after dinner. So right after dinner, as the kids get their dessert, they sit at the table and I read a story. And I ask each kid a question about the story. It takes 5 minutes. How much do they remember? I have no idea. But here's what I know. They have a far better chance of remembering the stories of God's faithfulness if I read those stories 300 times than if I never read them at all. Read the Bible to your kids. Trust God's grace and the Holy Spirit to let it sink in. Jesus said, a sower goes out to sow. He throws the seed. Some of it falls on this kind of soil and that kind of soil and that kind of soil. His job is to throw out the seed. That's you with your kids. And then finally, get your kids reading. Here's a hack that I'll give you as a parent. My 8-year-old son, Graham, is a terrific reader. But he doesn't love to read. He'd rather play video games. He'd rather play Legos. There are other things more interesting to him. Well, Graham's bedtime is 8 o'clock. So what I said to Graham is, I'll tell you what, if from 8 o'clock to 8:30 you will read, I'll let you stay up. If you don't want to read, you can go to bed. That's your bedtime, 8 o'clock. But if you want bonus time, the only way you get that is by reading. I instituted that rule 3 weeks ago. He just finished his second novel. And he's loving it. And you know the only time he reads? From 8 to 8:30. Because outside of that time, he'd rather play Legos. He'd rather play video games. He'd rather hang out with his dad. But 30 minutes of reading is gearing him up for a lifetime of learning through the written word and hopefully an ability to learn about God from the scriptures. Parents, you cannot raise children who can't read because those are children who will not grow in their faith. You want to disciple your kids? Get them reading. Hey, thanks so much for watching this episode of Wake Up, Look Up. While you're here, take a minute to like and subscribe. It really helps us get the word out. Don't hesitate to leave a review wherever you might find this podcast on an audio level and help spread the word. And hey, while you're here, check out all the other content we have at Christ Community Chapel on YouTube. Some of those videos are popping up on the screen now. Click on one.